this topic has a lot about human anthropology, the psychology of how we work individually and collectively, and how do we really think about results and what really drives different people. So that's why this is a very interesting topic for me. And I'm so thankful that all of you are here. I would love to keep it interactive. Keep those questions coming. I will take them in the end. I'm definitely looking forward for an engaging session. So let's get started. Quickly, a little bit about me, right? I thought I should tell you this. Exactly 1 year ago, August 25th, 2019, I was doing the rim to rim hike in the Grand Canyons. So this started at the South Rim and we went all the way to the North Rim, and it was just a fantastic hike. And for me, it's very exciting that exactly 1 year after I'm giving this talk. So it was just a small bit of information that excited me. I've been a core backend engineer for about 10 years. I've done a lot of low-level stuff. I've written C programs, firmware level, embedded system code, then moved on to some of the upper level stuff, written a lot of Python code, worked on the application layers, both in small and big companies. And then, 3 years ago, I moved into engineering leadership. With a lot of deliberation, after a lot of deliberation. And so far so good, I'm liking it. And what really makes me passionate every day about what I do, about my vocation, is just this combination of people and technology, people and product, right? The magic that really happens in the least expected scenarios, when good people come together and when we are working on the right stuff, the magic that can happen, that really drives me every day to work. And other than that, it's hard sometimes, but whenever I hit a dip, I really like to look towards nature for answers, and that's super exciting for me. I really love being out there. I'm a very outdoorsy person. I love looking into the nature, critical thinking, and taking every opportunity to just go towards self-improvement. So that's a little bit about me. And if that's out of our way, let me tell you a little bit about how I structured this talk so that it can set a little bit of context for us. First of all, I want to spend a few minutes thinking about why are we even talking about this topic? Why is this, Neely pointed out that this is a very popular topic, and I agree. There are so many videos, podcasts, books around this, right? So why are we talking about high performance, especially when we are talking about teams, engineering teams? Why is it a thing? And then we'll explore some principles, like are there some core principles that we can use to track this high performance inside teams? Because most of the times it's not like there's full high performance and there's full low performance, right? There's no such thing. It's usually a combination. We are either tending towards high performance, or sometimes we're tending towards lesser performance. So how can we really establish those core principles? Then I want to talk about some signs, both good and bad, that I have experienced in my career, having worked in different companies for different managers, for different kinds of teams, which had different vision, mission, strategies, everything, right? With that changing, can we look for signs? Are there any good and bad signs that we as leaders can use? And then we'll go over some of the strategies. Are there any tactics that we can use on a daily basis? Can I do certain things so that I can drive high performance? Can I do certain things to weed out inefficiency so that I know I'm going towards a better place? So we'll talk about strategy. And then powers and superpowers. I feel like as leaders, we're doing so many things, at least on a weekly basis, all the way from hiring, feedback, coaching, mentoring, decision-making, maybe negotiation, right? So what are these powers and superpowers that we can use a little bit more mindfully so that we can understand our people and product better to then drive high performance? And then, of course, we'll open it up for questions. So that's pretty much the structure for today. That's what we will be spending the next 35-40 minutes talking about. My goal over here is really to provoke thought. You might have heard about most of the stuff. You probably would have read about it in books, but after these 45 minutes or so, if I would have provoked some thought inside you, some critical thinking processes, then that's like a thumbs up for me. So yeah, why are we talking about high performance engineering teams, right? So I feel like first to just kind of tell you my definition about what I mean by high performance in engineering teams is, first of all, there needs to be good code velocity. There needs to be good code quality. Are we shipping good quality code? Is there customer happiness? Is there people happiness? Are my direct reports really happy? Is my team really happy? And then can I retain people? Is there retention in the team, or are people leaving all the time? And then are we tracking for results, right? At the end of the day, every engineering team, I'm sure, I'm speaking for all of you here, we are tracking results. We are extremely results oriented as engineering teams. So if you see, there are a lot of and conditions going on there, right? So that's what high performance really means for me. And it's really in the long term. Are we tracking all this in the long term and just not for a short term, like 6 months, 1 release or 2 release cycles? It's really for the longer term. So that's what makes it challenging for me. It's a lot of things. And most of the times it's, engineers coming together, it's the company coming together, and making things happen, right? And that's why I feel like high performance it's a challenging thing, and it's important to talk about, because we are all trying to build something interesting, and velocity, quality, the customer happiness, everything matters. So that's how I kind of define it. And then just to kind of take note of the noise there. Is someone's trying to speak? Is there some noise anywhere? Let me see. I think that should be fine. Okay. Yeah, so that's like a segue into team cultures, right? What is it about teams that is so different from individual team members? So if you just think about it a little bit philosophically from the human anthropology perspective, maybe something changes when we go from individuals to teams. We talk about self-awareness when we are talking about individual people. And then when we talk about teams, it suddenly becomes collective intelligence. And this is a topic that is really interesting to me. And I'm reading a lot of books around this, and I'm still in the learning process. It's just, the dynamic is just very interesting. And engineering teams are so much team cultures. It's not like playing tennis, right? It's like playing a good game of basketball where a lot of people need to come together. The entire team and the coach need to come together to really win that big game. And especially if you're driving for greatness and just not for mediocrity, like let's say you're eyeing that championship, you really need the entire team to come together. And engineering teams are exactly like that. And it's up to the leader. It's really how the leader works with all these people to make sure that the bigger puzzle looks good. All the pieces are fitting well. There are no gaps. There are no inefficiencies. Or even if there are some short-term inefficiencies, what's the leader doing to weed them out? So that collective intelligence, the team mindfulness, is the team really together aware of where are we going, what is the goal, what is it that we're trying to achieve, and who is it that we need to make happy in the end? That's very interesting. And then this concept of high and low performers, right? Like the leaders need to be able to work with the current skill set in the team and keep an eye on the aptitude of the team members. Whenever you're delegating, whenever we're making decisions as leaders, something that comes really handy is how much time do I have? What's the goal that I need to accomplish? Can I grow a person? Can I work with his aptitude? Or maybe there isn't enough time. I need someone who has the current skill set and, get the job done. So how do you make those decisions really will set the tone for how performant your team is. And that's what brings me to the servant leadership model, right? So we are all trying to achieve these profits, revenue, growth. We are watching these metrics. We want the results. We are really driving for the results eventually, but how you do it matters so much, because high performance is not just an adjective, right? It's a culture. It's a team culture that takes time to set in. And if it's the right thing, and if you've done it in the right way, then it will sustain for a long time. It's supposed to nourish and sustain the team in the long term. So servant leadership is really bringing your leadership as a service to the table. What can you do as a leader to bring value to your direct reports, to your stakeholders, to your company, where you're approaching your job more like, oh, the entire company is my team. And, what can I really do to be more effective? How can I make the people around me more effective? The how is really the servant leadership. I really don't see any other way how you can drive high performance, but for servant leadership styles. And then the last one is really my favorite. A good leader always understands her people and product. And I did not say team, right? A leader needs to understand people on an individual basis, through one-on-ones, through feedback sessions, through coaching, through mentoring. Do you know them? Do you understand them? Do you know what drives them on a daily basis? What are they worried about? What is it that they don't want in their life at this point of time? What are their aspirations? What are their goals? How do they want to carve their career? So that knowledge of people is critical if you're trying to build a high performance team, and it has to be a very personable relationship. And same with the product, right? If you're leading engineering teams, especially in fast-paced companies, the technical acumen, understanding the product, where does the rubber meet the road? How does it affect the customer? And especially for prioritizing, it's so handy if the engineering leader is aware about where is the product impacting, how is the customer using it, and how are the engineers supposed to think about it. So people and product, that knowledge is important. And the right side, the diagram basically shows that, when there is that alignment between the individual team members, then the engineering teams and the organization itself, that's when it's smooth flowing. There's not a lot of friction, and that's how it should be. Because then what happens is the mission and the vision of the company gets mapped onto the strategies that the engineering team has set, and it translates really well to the aspirations and the tasks of the individual team members. So I feel like this is like the ideal goals to have, right? This slide is all about idealizing things, but that line of alignment is really important. So now that we have set a little bit about context about what a high performance team means, and what are we really thinking about when we use those words, I want to share a few principles that I think are very critical when we are talking about high performance teams. The first and the foremost is safety and trust, right? And trust is something that I cannot delegate as a leader. It needs to, I just need to spend time with my stakeholders, with my team, with my peers, with whoever I'm really interacting. Trust is just that one thing that takes time to build. And I need to, trust is really a mutual relationship. It's not only that I need to establish that trust with my direct reports, they also need to be able to trust me. So for that, how authentic I am, how comfortable I am with my vulnerabilities, how radically candid I am with my feedback mechanisms, all that comes into picture. So trust and safety are kind of interrelated, because if you can trust someone, and if you know that there is consistency in their behaviors, then you just feel so much more psychologically safer. And especially if you're allowed to voice your opinions, there's no risk of ridicule. It's a culture where ideas are promoted. It really promotes safety as well. So safety and trust is really like in the blueprint, it's really like the fundamental stone block, which is, which just cannot be absent if you are talking about high performance team cultures. Why are we even talking about high performance in team cultures if there is no trust and safety? So that's really like a minimum requirement. Dependability. I've seen great teams always have that dependability index really high, where as a team, I know that, I don't need to be an expert at everything. I know that there is this person who is an expert in that library. I know about that library too, but I'm not an expert. And if I'm busy doing something else and delivering on my project and I need help, I know I can go and talk to him. There is that dependability. I exactly know who's working on what. How can I really unblock myself? How can I unblock my team members? And I feel safe depending on my team members when necessary. And it's not pushing your work on others, right? It's just knowing where to get help from. And because that's the definition of a team. Structure and clarity. So all engineers, I have been an engineer for IC for 10 years, and I know this is super important. That clarity, where does my responsibility end? Who are my producers and consumers? What am I supposed to do for this story? What is the expectation from my manager to accomplish this? That clarity is really important. And if any of you have read Sun Tzu's Art of War, he really spends so much time talking about the clarity in instructions, right? Like that's in the context of going to war, but even otherwise, it's so relevant. As a leader, can you make your instructions clear? Can you write clear Jira stories? Can you write better epics? Can you document? Can you write one-pagers? And provide the structure correctly when you're doing that planning and road mapping, especially scoping. And that is really the leader's responsibility. The ICs can come and ask for it, but the leader is just supposed to do it to make sure that there is that smooth flowing rhythm in the team. Meaning and impact are kind of related, and especially in today's world where remote and cross geographical is the name of the game. How can a leader really instill that purpose? And if you think about it a little bit generally, right? All of us do our work so much better, even if it is just cleaning the kitchen sink or watering your front lawns. If you have a vested interest in it, if you can see a purpose in it and just not get stuck with the functionality aspect of whatever you're doing, if you can create meaning, and if you can attach that bigger purpose to your work, or if someone can do that for you, then you will do that job better. Human beings work that way. If they see a vested interest in it, if they can be invested in it, they see more accountability. So as leaders, it's really our job, because we know the bigger picture and we know how the puzzles are fitting together. Can we establish that purpose? Can we show that their work is actually impactful? How do their tasks and stories relate to the strategies and the customer requirements? How is it touching the customer's life? Are there any customer stories that we can share with the engineers to say that, hey, you added value and you did a fantastic job? So I think these are all responsibilities of both the ICs and the leaders, but more so for the leaders, right? Because they know the bigger pictures, they're dealing with more data, and they are kind of bridging the gap between product and engineering, business and engineering, more about product and engineering, and that's critical. So I just thought like talking about these principles was useful, and this will make sense when I talk about the science, quickly. And this is by no means an exhaustive list, but what I have seen in the past, where I thought that, those teams were not high performing, they had so many problems going on, being engineering teams, where there is a high employee turnover, right? There are a lot of people joining your team, but at the same time, there are people leaving. And not only are they leaving, people are taking lots of people with them when they leave. That's a bad sign. There's something is smelling bad there. Ask a lot of whys so that you know what is going on. Andy Grove says in High Output Management, right? Like he says, if you don't get the answer, if you're not able to see the root cause, ask 1, 3, 5, 7 whys. By the end of the 7th why, when you're asking why this, why that, right? If you, by the time you're asking 7 whys, you probably have already arrived at the root cause. But make sure you arrive at the root cause. Low skill and will. This is another major problem that I have experienced myself. If your willingness is high and if your current skill set is low, that's fine. I can coach you, I can motivate you. As a leader, I have so many tools in my bucket that I can use to kind of drive results. But what do I do if both the skill and the will are low? You have no aspirations. You're not thinking about your career. Nothing drives you. You don't want a promotion. And your willingness to do a good job is very low. That is a sign that is there in a not so high performing team. And this one is a classic, right? We've all seen this, read this, come across this way too often. Oh, that's Bob's code. That's Bob's library. I don't want to touch it. Oh, you should talk to Bob. So that's like a classic. I mean, why is it anyone's code? It's not code that should not be biased. It should not have egos. So can we do something engineering wise so that people can take more responsibility, even if it is refactoring? If the code has become messy, let's see why it got messy. Let's do retrospectives for the future. Let's fix it. But at any point of time, if you're not thinking as a team, there's a problem. Low fairness, again, Google did this research. It's all over. When people are not respecting each other, especially in meetings, in feedback sessions, the kind of language they use, are there any bad players? How are they writing emails? Is there a lot of blame game? How are they doing code reviews? All this needs to be given attention to. And if there is a low fairness index in your team, that will lead to low morale. So that's a bad sign. Not product minded, right? Like if the leader has not spent enough time making her engineers or promoting or advocating product mindedness, there will be a problem. I mean, most of us, we are probably following the Agile principles, right? And one of the core principles in the Agile Manifesto says that every engineer needs to know how does his or her code really relate to the customer, because you'll make better decisions. You'll not get lost in unnecessary details. You know when to ship. You'll understand the decisions that product is making. You'll understand priorities. And we're all working towards a mission. It's not just to satisfy our own code writing egos, right? So if you're product minded, you'll probably show that in the way you write your code as well. Leader out of sync. Sometimes what happens is there is too much of status for the leader to kind of catch up on. And most of the times bottom lines are not met, right? Forget about the stretch features. You're not even delivering on your commit features. That's a bad sign. So these are some of the things that I have observed. I'm sure there are many more, but these are some of the ways to think about it. Good signs, again, like most of these talk for themselves, but I feel like I'll call out a couple here. One is accountability. It's a requirement. Good teams always know that accountability is not a nice to have feature. It's just your code velocity or code quality are really, you need to be accountable for that. It's okay if you're learning, but don't make the same mistake twice. And that's really important. That sense of belonging, right? Like teams mean that it's a community. It has that collective feel to it. So are you proud of working in this team? Do you feel like you belong here with the purpose and whatever the team is trying to achieve? They have that, right? And automation and documentation. This is so important for engineering teams. Can we do, most of the high performance teams have smart people or people who are thinking about the code in the right way, and they don't want to spend time doing manual stuff. So can you automate as much as possible? Are you seeing value in doing that? And documentation. I'm not a big fan of writing detailed specs, but is your team doing good write-ups when we are writing those epics and stories? Are we having good one-pagers? Are there places for the team to go and check, okay, who's working on what? How can I unblock myself? who should I really talk to if I'm thinking about this library? There should be just enough documentation so that the communication and collaboration can become more effective. So automation and documentation, they are a topic in themselves when we're talking about high performance teams, right? And most of these high performance teams spend a lot of time, and they see value in spending time on tools, and building in those efficiencies in the system. And people growth, I've seen that in really good, happy, high performing teams, or at least the ones that are tending towards that, they talk about growth very openly. Growth is a nice thing. People talk about growth. People are growing all the time under a good leader. So that's definitely a good sign. I don't want to go over all of them because we'll be touching upon some of the things in the other slides as well, but they kind of talk for themselves. So then what I want to talk about is, when we know these signs, can we think a little bit about the, the philosophies, right? So hiring, it really creates such a big ripple effect for engineering teams. If you're not certain about hiring someone, don't hire them, because it's so expensive to let go of them. Training, coaching, everything needs time. So pay a lot of attention to hiring. Once you have hired the right talent, go towards promoting autonomy. Have certain frameworks, delegate, learn the art of delegation, build your social capital as a leader inside the company, so that you can provide that space for your team members to become autonomous. It's more like saying, hey, I'm going to give you a high performing car. Hey, you are going to be behind the steering wheel. I'm just going to be in the back seat. I'm going to help you with the navigation. I'm looking at Google Maps. I'm making sure there's no traffic on this road. Your responsibility is to put yourself in the sixth gear and just drive at an optimum speed, right? I mean, this is not a very holistic example, but what I mean is, don't come in the way of your engineers. Provide autonomy whenever possible, and make sure that you are removing obstacles for your engineers so that they can do whatever they're good at really well. And then releasing consistently, defining your North Stars. And after you have defined your North Star, just see how does success look like, right? Like, let's say you're releasing consistently, it's good quality code, but you have a deliverable, you have a goal to reach this quarter, this year. Just define how does it look, have proper objectives set, a very deterministic set of objectives that is shared between product, marketing, engineering, and the ICs know about it too, so that you know exactly, okay, when I get to this point, I know that these three objectives have been realized, we have delivered on them. We have also made the customer happy, and the customer is ready to share his story on our website or do a case study for us, right? This is our definition of success. Once you have defined it really clearly and really precisely, then it's just about implementing, right? So I feel like releasing consistently is good, but whatever your goals are, just make sure everyone knows how it looks when you get there. Then growing the code with the product. I mean, it's impossible unless you're really following a waterfall approach. You're really implementing these parts of the software incrementally. So it's your code, your architecture, your design is supposed to be growing with the product, with the requirements, with what the customer needs. How is the company really going with respect to its financial objectives? Scaling, performance, all these things, just know that it's going to evolve. And as engineering teams, we will have to be flexible with it. And wherever possible, people and engineering processes, remove inefficiencies. If you don't have resources, get resources. You want a bigger budget, fight for it beforehand during the planning stages. If you need more people, hire more people, seek relief, share resources from peer teams, remove those inefficiencies, conflict resolutions. Is there a conflict between a high and a low performer, between a senior and a junior member? It's your responsibility as a leader to kind of remove these kind of obstacles, so that we're really on track for a machine that can execute really well. And then learning continuously. I think I read this thing recently in a book where it said bad companies get destroyed by conflicts or crises, and good companies kind of survive them, but great companies really evolve when they learn from them, right? They improve with every crisis. So learning is just part of the high performing attitude, whether on an individual basis or really on a team level. So the strategies for this that we can use as leaders, so we have the philosophies with us. The strategies are kind of mapping to that, right? Do you have, as a leader, do you have some kind of a trick that you can set? You can map the vision and the mission of the company, which really comes from the business, right? To the product strategies, and understand the product strategies and translate them to the engineering strategies, because then they will become your tactics. They will become your execution strategies as an engineering leader. So just setting that direction is very important. To implement that vision, you will need frameworks, processes, and by processes, I mean things like one-on-one, stand-ups, whatever are your engineering practices. So get to that stage where you're thinking about that implementing the vision collaboratively, right? Include people. If you think that there is a person who could be a very critical reviewer for you, or who might not be happy with this or with your idea, co-opt that person early on. But whatever you need to implement that vision, start thinking about it early, so that it doesn't flow down during the release cycle, right? And then allocation and prioritization. This is really about getting the right people, putting them in the right places, and making them autonomous. And this, as leaders, we will have to do it continuously, because the people are changing all the time. The team is changing all the time. The collective intelligence is also changing all the time. People leave, people join the team. Even the people who are staying in the team, their intelligence is kind of varying day by day. Their aspirations are growing. So you will have to spend that time where you're consistently changing. How are you allocating resources? How are you allocating projects? That is partly also the art of delegation. That needs to be a very fine-tuned process. Execution, can't talk enough about it. No matter how good your strategies are, how good your philosophies are, and how good your like the mission and the vision of the company is, if the leader cannot execute, in fact, that's where the manager really comes in. You can be both a leader and a manager, but it's all about executing towards delivery, right? Like, if you have a goal, can you get the entire team along with yourself to the end point and keep everyone happy as well somehow, right? So that's really executing. And sometimes you need to make rapid decisions, slow decisions, figure out what is the right method, so that sometimes you need to make those tough calls, but that's part of your strategy. Then developing people is an ongoing, continuous process. High performance team means that you don't want low performers, right? It's not that, sometimes maybe people don't have all the skill set, and that's fine. But as a leader, can you make sure that you don't have low performers? You have a strategy to work with underperformers and get them onto speed. Basically, you have people who are either high potentials or who have high aptitude, right? That's what makes a high performance team. So, so developing people is one of your, it's really your win all tool. If you can coach and develop people as a continuous process, you've really done so much already towards your team building. So I feel like these are some of the strategies that have worked really well for me. And the last thing in this set is really talking about engineering practices, right? So quickly, I think when we are writing these design and programming principles, just coming together, talking with the tech leads, talking with the senior engineers as to, how should we really write our libraries? Who are our producers? Who are our consumers? What's the naming convention? How can it be smooth? How can we make it more general? How can we really make it more consumable, right? Just trickling down that servant leadership model everywhere. You're really looking at your work as a way of adding more value to your people. So that spending a lot of time on the design and programming design principles. That's really a high leverage activity for an engineering team. Stand-ups, stand-ups are perfect because they're quick, they're collaborative. Who is doing what, who is blocked by what, who should I talk to when I have a problem. It's beneficial not only for the leader but also for the team, and that's how you're promoting that dependability, that team dynamic, that cohesion that should be there between the various team members, because you're never too away from information, right? 24 hours already feels like a lot to be out of sync on what's going on inside the team. Stand-ups are perfect. Code reviews. As a leader, I've done a lot of code reviews. Of course, when I don't have time nowadays, I don't do the detailed code reviews, but I always do the review of the code reviews, right? What's the language? How are they playing blame games? What is the words that they're using? What are they saying when they're sure about a comment? When a person is code reviewing and he's sure about something that is wrong, how does he form his sentence? When he's not sure about it, how does he choose his words? How nice and empathetic is he to a junior engineer? Are the senior and junior engineers working with an open-mindedness, with a sense of learning? And that should show in the code reviews. And as an engineering manager, it's my responsibility to reward the good practices, talk about it, encourage, bring it up in team meetings, provide team level feedback so that everyone knows that, hey, this is a nice to have. This is a skill that is looked forward to in this company, and something else is not. So let me not do it. Let me emulate this other person's style, right? And the leader needs to work with them on an individual basis to promote that culture. Integration tests, your product tests, system tests. It's really a way of building quality into your code, because that's really getting me to my next point, which is, how can you avoid those bugs as much as possible? How much testing are you doing inside your team? How much are the engineers really caring about doing this testing? And how are you really thinking about these bugs versus engineering driven features, right? What is typically known as painkillers and vitamins. Painkillers are those customer issues and bugs that the customer would have filed. You'll as a leader, okay, why did that happen? I'm going to run a retrospective on this at the end of the sprint, but also do we want to fix it? How do we want to fix it? And is there a potential for this to become a vitamin? Can this become an engineering led feature in the future, maybe for the next release cycle? Let's do a customer metric. Let's get some data. Let's talk to product so that we can decide and we can ensure that this problem doesn't become a painkiller originating from more customer issues, more customer bugs, right? So just thinking about these engineering practices all the time, right? Every release after release, how are you weeding out the inefficiencies really go a long way. Now, I have 2 more slides, and after that it's summary and powers and superpowers, right? So I feel like my favorite in this is coaching, because I feel like feedback is great too. If you've learned how to give feedback, the timing of it, and I've written a lot about this on Medium as well. I write a lot about engineering leadership, and feedback is definitely one of my favorites. But I feel like if coaching doesn't follow feedback, it's really an empty promise. If you have feedback for someone you care, you really want something to improve, can you give them support? Coaching can be for senior engineers, junior engineers, and not only between the manager and the ICs, right? It's also in between ICs, like among ICs. I really tell my tech leads and my senior engineers to actually coach junior engineers and play that role of, being an advocate, being a coach, being a mentor. You don't have to ask me, right? I'm not needed for everything. If you can be that for your team, you're really adding value, and that's really what's expected out of senior engineers to build that cultural aspect. Rapid and slow decision making, especially if you work for startups and smaller companies. I think this is a classic one, because sometimes you don't have the time. Slow decision making is where you collect the data, you iterate over all the possibilities, you come up with demos, you show it to your higher ups, and then collectively as a team, you select one of the better approaches. That's the classic and the traditional slow decision making process. But rapid decision, sometimes it's about gut, right? And what's gut? It's really your subconscious mind telling you from a lot of synthesized previous experiences. So it's quickly talking with a stakeholder, maybe with a champion, your tech lead, whoever is championing that project, getting quick updates, making a rapid decision. You should know when to make a rapid decision and a slow decision making process. If the stakes are low and the results are going to be very valuable, go for rapid decision making. If the stakes are really high and it requires a lot of efforts, like 3 months of engineering time, then go for slow decision making process. So these kind of things go a long way. And there's a reason why we are called engineering leaders, right? At the end of the day, we are still engineers. We just cannot remove that technicality out of our leadership. Unlike so many of the other traditional vocations, like the automobile industry, the financial sectors, engineering is a special case for leadership, because most of the times we as engineers would have become engineering leaders. And that's also good in so many ways, because you understand so many of the pain points of the ICs really well. So just make sure you're keeping your technical acumen sharp all the time. You need to be able to make those good decisions. And for that, you need to be able to ask the right questions. To ask those right questions, you need to understand the product really well. So technical acumen is really one of my favorites. So I know I didn't talk about everything here. We can, take it offline as well, and feel free to ping me on LinkedIn. Superpowers, I'll talk about one on this slide, and that's managing your social capital, right? And by social capital, I really mean, as engineering leaders, we are dealing with a lot of stakeholders, and you owe your team certain things. Maybe how do you budget? Are you thinking about sending your direct reports to conferences as part of growing them and coaching them? You're probably thinking about so many avenues for them. So you'll have to think about budget. You'll have to think about co-opting the right people, because let's say you're working on a really kick-ass migration, and someone in another team, maybe from the system test team, is bound to create a critical scenario for you 2 months down the line. He'll probably have critical feedback for you. Can I co-opt that person early on? Make sure that I am creating that smoothness in the pipeline. For that, my social capital is really important. Can you, first of all, get credible? As leaders, we are expected to be right more often than not. So as you're being careful and you're doing your job well and you're becoming more credible, you earn these brownie points, right? So as a leader, make sure you spend them wisely. If it's not worth it, if it's not worth if it's not a battle worth fighting, don't spend your social capital. But if you think that this is going to add value not only to your team, but also about how your team will collaborate with the peer teams, or maybe cross collaboration in a bigger project, then spend that social capital and spend it wisely, so that you're growing as a leader. And because of your growth, your team is growing as well. And any growth, if it does not culminate to your team, then I would do some soul searching there. So social capital is really a superpower. So are all of the others, like art of negotiation is yet another one of my favorites. If you don't have the time today, we'll definitely, talk about it another time or take it offline. So I just feel like, as engineering managers, we have so many skills on our side, so many tools that we can use, only if we are a little thoughtful, only if we are a little mindful, especially when we are leading remote teams, cross-geographical teams. How can we establish that meaning? How can we really build that culture? Because no matter how good your strategies are, they should be, but no matter how good they are, if you are not converting all this into your team culture and really building it into the team mindfulness, if everyone is not thinking around the same line, then there is going to be a leak somewhere, right? And it's going to sap away that performance. Everyone affects everyone in the team. and long-term productivity. We are always looking for why all this, right? Why these strategies, these principles, these ways of thinking, these frameworks that we use? Why are we doing that? Because we want to be productive in the long term. We are trying to build a kick-ass company, a good team, a great team. And like Peter Drucker said, going from good to great is a hard journey. To do that, make sure you're concentrating on developing your people for the long term, and know your people on a one-on-one basis, know your product. The best of the leaders always know how people and product interact, not only inside the company, but also outside in terms of customers. And even as a leader, even as a team, we should always be learning. Because that creates open-mindedness, that creates curiosity, that leads you to ask the right questions. And that's what makes it attractive to work for a team, right? And this is really one of my favorite quotes where, you don't really have to be a manager to be a leader, or you don't need to be in a leadership position. But if your actions can inspire others to do more, learn more, or if you can influence other people to become a little bit more than what they were yesterday, I think then that's a good leader, that's a great leader. And I truly feel if it's a great leader, it implies high performance, right? It should not be orthogonal to each other. How can it be? I mean, it can take time to build high performance. You might be a great leader and you might have joined this team recently and you need some time to build in that high performance, but it's implied. Great leaders always think about their people, think about the product to drive high performance. So that's really my closing thought.